Hey folks, I'm Alex Dowd.
And I'm Katie Rife.
Today we're going to be talking about the concluding chapter of the new Star Wars trilogy, The Rise of Skywalker.
Welcome to Film Club. All right, so Alex, we've got a movie event that is technically 40 years in the making coming out this week, although Star Wars movies come out so often now, it doesn't quite have the same weight as it used to when there's a new Star Wars movie in theaters. Nevertheless, Rise of Skywalker has a lot that it needs to wrap up.
Yeah, there's a lot riding on it. I would say that it's a film that feels like it has a lot riding on it.
You're right, yeah.
This is the concluding chapter of the trilogy that J.J. Abrams started with The Force Awakens in 2015.
Also following up The Last Jedi,
right.
which, much to my personal chagrin, continues to be a hot topic of conversation
Yes,
to this
it's been
day.
endlessly relitigated.
Absolutely.
Very divisive. I watched this one and I think this is not a film that's going to be divisive.
Really? I kind of walked away feeling that it will be divisive in the sense that it sort of tries to play to all factions of the fandom. And so I think everyone's going to see what they want to see in it and then argue about what they saw.
I felt like watching this that this was basically 2+ hours of obligations being fulfilled.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oof.
We can't really talk much about the plot because
No.
then you will come to our homes and murder us.
Yes.
I will say that this has been spoiled by the trailer. Emperor Palpatine is back.
Palpatine is back.
And that kind of launches the plot into motion. The movie opens with Kylo Ren, played again by Adam Driver, basically going out to this place in space where this signal is coming from.
Yeah, it's sort of like a dark side Atlantis in that it's this mystical place. It's not on any map and it's only vaguely known where it might be.
I think it's one element of a plot that's sort of constantly sending the characters from one planet to another.
I mean, I think that's pretty typical of a Star Wars movie. This time around, they do have, our core trio has more screen time together than they do in either Last Jedi or Force Awakens.
Right.
And that dynamic is pretty well established by now.
That element of camaraderie that they establish, it is nice to see these characters together. I think the characters are one of the stronger aspects of these new Star Wars films.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think most people, even people who don't necessarily love the new films or even The Last Jedi, tend to respond pretty well to this new cast of characters.
And that's a key thing for them to figure out, and they did do that successfully because, the core trio of Han, Luke, and Leia is at the heart of the original trilogy as well, and it's something that's a little bit missing from the prequel trilogy, the sort of like lovable gang.
Big time, yeah. I mean, the prequel trilogy is all like tariff-discussing Jedi boars.
Yes, absolutely.
That movie was like in dire need of a Han Solo.
Oh, yes.
Or those movies were.
Yeah, big time.
And I feel like these new ones have several Han Solos.
Yes, they've got more Han Solos than they know what to do.
Right, exactly. I just think there's an element of desperation about this film that hangs over it. I felt watching a lot of it, and this includes the action scenes, which are not necessarily especially innovative or especially different than something we've seen in
they're
past
really
Star
not.
Wars films.
I mean, a lot of what you're saying is true of the film as a whole. It's satisfying enough, but I definitely got the impression that this film was J.J. Abrams looking at every one of us in the theater personally and going, is this okay?
Yeah, it's very desperate to please.
Are you okay? Yes, so eager to please that it ends up kind of sabotaging itself in the narrative. Every time it kind of teases something like bold or even dark, it walks it back pretty consistently.
Well, that includes some of the elements Johnson introduced in the second film, which, as we mentioned, is very divisive with Star Wars fans, partially because it dared to take some of the characters in new directions. It also dared to disregard elements of the mythology. And I think that this is a movie that has heard your complaints about that and is like, we're here to rectify those. I mean,
God, it's such a customer service representative of a movie
Totally.
when you put it that way.
Yeah, and I think there's an element of all concluding chapters of sagas have this kind of problem where what you end up watching is just sort of falling action. It's like we have loose ends to tie up. We have to bring this thing in for a landing. It was a problem I think that some people had even with Return of the Jedi. It's interesting to note that Star Wars fans have been complaining about Star Wars movies since Return of the Jedi.
It's also, so definitely part of the Star Wars experience.
Yes.
Well, when you think about the fact that the initial follow-up to Star Wars was the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. It goes all the way back to that.
Yeah.
Where people have been dissatisfied with Star Wars sequels since basically the start.
Since the first movie, everything that's come after that, people have been like, what?
But this sort of compounds the normal problem of a saga conclusion in that it also is reckoning with all of the complaints about the last movie.
Yeah.
So it feels like a film that is desperate to stick that landing in a way that's going to satisfy the most number of people, but it ends up being something that, to me, feels like it takes no risk whatsoever.
Especially narratively.
Right. It's. I think it ends up sort of hitting a lot of very predictable notes.
Yeah, there's even a few kind of, even on a more micro level with some of the dialogue, there are a couple lines in this movie that could be interpreted as dings at The Last Jedi, or you could also explain it away as, oh no, it's not actually a ding, it applies to the plot because of this. And I think that's very emblematic of Abrams' approach to this film.
Abrams' approach to everything, I would say, in a way.
Yeah, okay, fair.
I mean, like, Abrams was brought into the Star Wars universe, I think, because his function on that first film was to say, we know you didn't like the prequels. We're here to reset, to give you what you like about Star Wars again.
Yeah.
Fans had a similar reaction, albeit for entirely different reasons, to The Last Jedi. So here Abrams is again to play cleanup again.
Yeah.
You know, the question is whether or not it really needed cleanup. I guess that's the larger debate.
I don't think it needed cleanup. I don't have a problem with The Last Jedi or Solo. It's a very lonely island to be on in terms of opinions about Star Wars.
Yeah. To me, the most interesting thing about these new films, and certainly the most interesting thing about this last one, is this subtextual element, which is that these movies are all about grappling with the legacy of Star Wars.
Yeah.
All of the characters in the film are essentially exist in the shadow of the first trilogy. There's a big element of that with the villain, again played by Adam Driver, who's somebody who's basically been struggling to find his own role in this story.
Yeah, and I think the character of Kylo Ren was really cleverly done because, yeah, he plays that role and he also sort of serves as a stand-in for these angry, toxic fans in a lot of ways. There were some things that I did like quite a bit, but they were elements in what I felt overall was a very mixed bag. There were some parts where I felt that the CGI backgrounds were very obvious and spoiled the illusion, but there are other parts where there are, you know, these big fantasy, obvious CGI locations that I thought were really cool. A desert planet and some fun new aliens. I always like the elaborate practical effect creature design.
But how many desert planets do we really need at this point?
There's only 3 kinds.
Yeah. There's like desert, ice, and forest.
And city sometimes.
Oh yeah, city sometimes. Yeah.
That's all they got. Okay, well on that note, for you personally, you know, since everyone kind of sees what they want to see in Star Wars, did you find it satisfying personally?
No, I didn't find it satisfying, no. But partially that's because I felt like it was so relentlessly attempting to hit the beats that it thought that I or the larger audience wanted. I think at this point in the series, I would have liked a little bit more surprise. I mean, again, I think that that is the sort of concluding chapter problem, which is that all the mystery and urgency is gone. We're just sort of bringing things in for a landing. But I did not find the place that this movie necessarily leaves these characters to be especially interesting.
I thought it was conclusive enough, but overall, as the film wore on, the sort of people-pleasing concessions that they make in the narrative definitely were deflating to me. So I think at the end, I ended up with a feeling of like, well, that was nice, instead of, you know, feeling energized and excited.
Well, it's a new Star Wars movie, so I'm sure all of you will form your own opinions on it sometime over this holiday season.
Yeah, some of you might be going to see it. We don't know. It's a little indie release.
That's right.
Check Fandango.
So thank you for watching today, and we will see you next time.